Welcome to Art is Good For You, the podcast spreading the message that making and experiencing art can help with healing and happiness no matter who we are. I'm Rachel Duffield, and after nearly 20 years working in museum education, I gave it all up to start a community interest company helping people in rural communities make and experience art. At 52, I'm so lucky to be living the dream as a full-time artist, art teacher, and now podcaster. It's my belief that even if art isn't up front and centre in your life, it can still have a big impact, sometimes in unexpected ways. So I'm inviting people from all walks of life, some arty, some not, to chat with me about the 3 pieces of art in their life that have turned out to be memorable, special, or even life-saving. My guest today is an actor, budding writer, and massage therapist. She describes herself as a willing thrall to a pair of cats, a lover of laughter, and, as she puts it, also a blind person. I know her not only as someone who is impressively thoughtful and funny, but also as someone who doesn't let a little thing like being also a blind person stop her grabbing life with both hands and jolly well getting on with it. Jill, welcome to Art is Good For You.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Yeah.
So you put in your notes to me that you reckon you are 60% consumer of art and 40% creator. Now, given that you're an actor, I would have thought that would have been the other way around. So do tell.
You would, wouldn't you? Well, it is the nature of acting, isn't it? Is that most of the time when one says one is an actor, what one actually is most of the time is, a waiter or a bartender or whatever your other job is. So yeah, whilst I still consider that to be my main career, my sort of focus and part of my identity, I'm not actually great at getting myself a lot of consistent work. So I think I'm just coming out of a bit of a stagnant phase. So hence the 60-40 is that I definitely consume a fair amount of art, which we can, I'm sure, go on to elaborate on. But in terms of creating, I'm very fortunately, I've been engaged in a panto in Bungay for the last 3 years. I've just started rehearsing for Crude Apache, is a Norwich-based local theatre company who I've been a member of which I've been a member for many, many moons now. And they have just started rehearsing their Babes in the Wood pantomime as well, which will be in the Madder Market Theatre in January. One of the other things I have started doing is a couple of the other members of Crude Apache with whom I was doing some harmony work for the last couple of shows. So we've decided that we wanted to do some singing together. So there's a bit of singing happening, but the main thing that I am developing into creatively is the writing. As I said, I'm a budding writer. And earlier on I said, it's really hard to make your own work when you're an actor. And there's a really obvious answer to that, which is, well, then make your own work. So I've been interested in writing for years, and I've just not really ever properly engaged with it. And I was very, very fortunate that I received the Developing Your Creative Practice funding. I was successful in my application for that. So I decided that what I had put my bid in to do was to develop my script writing skills. So I'm in the process of starting to write scripts, but it's a very, the whole purpose of that funding stream is to develop your creative practice rather than create a piece of art. And actually one of my other tutors is blind as well. So I'm talking with them a lot about, from a script perspective, what can I, the writer, do to not just make the character more authentic, but how can I structure the script so that it requires less audio description?
Oh, that's fascinating. I'm really glad you got the award to do it. I look forward to seeing what you... Yeah, can't wait.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I shall keep you posted.
Well done, you. So how about consuming, your consumption of art?
My consumption is, I would say, embarrassingly little theatre, not none, but I sort of, because I worked front of house in theatres for 17 years, and like any job, it does sort of get to the point where, you're like, oh, I could stay and watch the show tonight, or, I can come and go as I please for free. I don't want to go to my job on my day off though, so I got out of the habit of watching theatre, and I do still go, but not with anywhere near the regularity that I think I did when I first started working in theatre, and I was just,
Hmm.
going and seeing whatever I could. So yeah, some theatre, quite a lot of TV. I'm very impressed with the sort of development of TV series. They are much more like
Yeah.
really fleshed out films now.
Yes.
And I think, personally, for me, I prefer them to films because with a TV series, you can take that extra time. I do appreciate a really well told story
Mm.
that makes you wait, whereas with films, it's just more difficult to do that because you have less time. That's,
Yes. Yes.
unless you want people to sit through 4 hours, and it's got to be really good if that's what you expect.
Certainly has.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, same.
So, any other kind of consumption? Is it all music?
Mm.
You're a
Yeah,
singer.
lots of music. Yeah, I am a singer, so I have music on most of the time when I'm walking. I music and or podcasts and audiobooks. So
Hmm.
I do still have the capacity to sort of read, but I have to do it on a tablet with everything zoomed in big. And that does, again, that sort of interrupts the flow of a sentence when you're having to sort of scroll back across the screen to find the beginning of
Yeah.
the next
Yeah.
sentence.
Yeah.
So it's possible, and I do sometimes do it, but I listen to a lot of audiobooks, a lot of podcasts, a lot of music. And I don't really go to see a huge amount of live music outside of, I went to see the Foo Fighters at Wembley last year because,
Mm.
they're a band I love from many, many moons. Um, but my partner is in a band, so I go to see them play, and they were at Folk East this year, so I went to see a few other artists. But it's not that I don't enjoy live music anymore. I think partly it is actually to do with the eyesight thing, that music events tend to be just a little bit more visually confusing. They tend to
Hmm.
be, standing events where you're in darkness, but you're moving around, and you have to, like, find the bar and the loos, but there's still music going on, so you can't really hear anyone. So, I've reduced my capacity for
Yeah.
gathering information. So it's not that they frighten me, but I think it's why they're not my like go-to event, is
Yeah.
not specifically live music. But when I've got a reason to go, like it's a band I want to see or it's some of my friends, I'll quite happily go.
Mm.
Yeah, and I think, well, there was another art, yeah, in terms of visual art.
Mm.
Again, something that might seem counterintuitive given that I identify as a blind person. I do still really enjoy going to galleries and museums.
How does that work for you
And
with your average gallery and museum as a blind person?
um yeah, interesting. It really does depend on I think it depends on how much the gallery and museum has engaged with accessibility, or just the audience experience. I think lots of galleries and things are getting better at recognizing that whether it's a disability or not, lots of people take in information in different ways. And the more successful an exhibition is, I think, does kind of depend on whether they've taken that into account for
Mm.
everyone. Is there a visual and an audio and a, where possible, tactile option? So I have found that when we go to art galleries, if it's literally just here's a painting and here's a description of the painting,
Mm.
I still enjoy that because, like, I have a couple of visual aids I can take. So if I can't get close enough to the thing, I can use, like, I've got it looks like a mini telescope, so I look like a tiny pirate. I can well, I'm not tiny, but the telescope is, I'm normal size. Sorry. Ridiculous. um yeah, so I can sort of do things to see the art better, but when it comes to learning about, the artist was thinking this when they wrote it, and this is who
Mm.
the artist is, all that basic information.
Mm.
Again, I have a visual aid that kind of it's like a camera that translates text into speech, but it's a bit hit and miss. It's okay, but it
Mm.
can get a bit glitchy, and if Bluetooth signal drops out, then you can't hear it anymore.
Yeah.
And I go with my partner, and he will happily read stuff for me, but that gets quite tiring for him, especially if
Yeah.
he's trying to enjoy the exhibit as well.
Yeah.
Then he finds he's spending all his time trying to read stuff and not actually getting to look at anything. I can still get a huge amount of pleasure out of just looking
Mm.
at something and trying to think about what it makes me feel. That's
Yeah.
nice. That's sort of what
Yeah.
art does, isn't it?
Well, it is. And
Yeah.
honestly,
Yeah.
this brings us to our first question. Oh my
Yes,
God.
it
So,
does. Oh my God.
so I asked you to pick three pieces
Yeah.
of art that meant something to you.
Mm,
And the art can be
you
anything. It
did.
doesn't have to be a visual piece of art. It could
Hmm.
be a book, or it could be a song, or it could be anything. So your first piece is, I asked you for a piece that was your sort of first thing that you could remember seeing as a piece of art.
Mm,
And you have
yeah.
chosen, well, you tell me.
I have chosen the piece of work by Salvador Dali called The Persistence of Memory,
Which is the melting
which
clocks.
I think I encountered that when I was quite young, so probably sort of, I don't know, 7 or 8, something, when my memories begin, I suppose.
Yeah.
And I was like, that is mad. What is happening? Why? There's like a bit of something that looks sort of like a chicken leg and sort of like a face, and it's got a clock melting off. Like, this is mad. And then I think maybe someone had a book of Salvador Dali's work and they showed me some more. And I was like, oh, there's loads of melting clocks. And what's that elephant doing with legs like that? And I just remember being really sort of like, I don't understand this. And I liked it. I didn't know why I liked it, and I found it quite unsettling and a bit creepy. But equally, I was just like, it's good though, isn't it? So it's the first time I really remember something making me wonder about what art is and what's happening to me when I look at it.
A piece of art that's
Yeah.
helped you through troubled times.
I really enjoyed a TV show that was on. It was on for 2 series. It got cancelled after that, and it finished about a year ago, 2 years ago now. And I liked it so much that I ended up sort of accidentally falling into a fan fiction community. And yeah, I'd vaguely encountered fan fiction in the past. And then I sort of thought, oh well, I might just see if other people are sort of writing, the season 3 that never was. I might sort of try and catch up with that. And they were, I mean, this thing was absolutely huge in terms of the fan fiction world. It was sort of a bit of a cult. It got a bit of a cult following. And I keep evading telling you what the show is. I'll quite happily tell you. It was Our Flag Means Death, which was the kind of
Oh,
the
I
pirate
watched that. It
comedy.
was
Yeah,
brilliant. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
right. It was a lot.
I
And this is the
loved
thing
it.
is that
Yeah, it
I
did
don't think
finish
it's
too
the great.
soon.
Yeah, it really did. But
Yeah.
I don't think it was the greatest comedy that's ever happened or the greatest piece of art, but it just hit all the things I like. Like, it did
I
everything I
loved it.
like.
And it involved a
Yeah.
pirate.
It
And you're
involved, I
already a
love,
pirate.
I am
So,
already a pirate, exactly. And yeah, and I mean, I love Taika Waititi, I love Reese Darby, and it had loads of other people who popped up. I was like, oh, it's that guy from that thing. I love that person. So it just, it had loads of things I liked about it. And I do love a queer love story. Absolutely. I'm such a sucker for a queer love story. So I was like, oh, that is, it's really unusual to have seen one. And I felt like it was a really sensitively pitched show. There was lots of, and this is, I suppose, this is where I'm getting to, is that this fandom was a group of people that really respected the fact that you had, I mean, there was quite a lot of different ethnicities
mm,
represented. There was at least one sort of non-binary character,
mm,
so gender was treated quite, sort of openly. And obviously, it's a queer love story, so you had the whole sort of, queer identity present. And it was also at its core, it was also about a couple of, well, several quite broken people sort of trying to work out whether they could be what they wanted to be and whether they deserved to be. So it was quite a sort of a gentle mental health story as well. And so this fandom is a collective of people who value that kind of representation. And so it's quite a soft, gentle, kind, supportive, just lovely group of people. And so gradually, sort of through involving myself with this fandom at a time when I was feeling a bit sort of lost and disconnected from myself as an artist, and I'm interested in writing, but I don't know if I can. I've done a bit of it, but I've never really explored, and I was being very doubtful and very sort of just quite negative. And just being a part of this really lovely community of people that were just very, very there and very willing to respond honestly, but empathetically, and
mm.
to offer advice and support and cheerleading and feedback it was just a really lovely, healthy place to find.
Oh,
And so I started writing and I carried on writing, and it became, for the first time in years, I realized I had an arts-based hobby that I in no way was trying to work out where it fitted into my career. And I tend to do that. I
yeah.
take a fun idea and I immediately turn it into work, which sort of sucks all the joy out of it.
Yes.
And so through doing this fan fiction writing, I suddenly discovered that I could, again, engage in a creative activity purely for fun. And it didn't matter how many people read it, and it didn't matter whether it was good or not. I just liked doing it, and I was doing it with other people who liked doing it. And through that, it led me into a position where I sort of felt like, well, maybe I should try doing that and seeing if there is a leg of my career that sits that way. So it was very much finding that group of people on the back of that TV show that has I think just really reignited my sort of creative spark and my willingness to accept that it's okay to enjoy the art you create. Like you're allowed to actually have fun with it, which I had
Yeah.
forgotten.
And do you
I'd
think
got to
it's
a
better
point.
for it?
Whether the actual quality of my work is any better, I don't really know because it doesn't really exist yet. But
Mm.
certainly my ability to engage with the process and feel optimistic about the process has
Well, which is a
increased
benefit in itself.
massively.
Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah.
Well, obviously art is good for you.
Art is very good for you. And when you actually remember that you can enjoy it,
Mm.
I don't know if lots of other professionals do this, but I
Oh, I do it all the
certainly,
time. At the moment,
yeah,
I have a new hobby that I'm half good at. I'm instantly, right, how can I turn this into work?
yeah,
How can I
yeah,
make a
yeah.
course out of this or run it as a workshop?
Hmm.
I can't just enjoy something for the sake of it.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, that just remembering that the
Mm.
creation of art can just be something that makes your heart sing. That is enough
Mm.
reason to do
Yes,
it.
it
So
jolly well is. And I think, do you
it
think that's
is.
because of the way art is regarded as sort of luxury and a nice to have? So to feel justified almost in making art or
Mm,
doing something creative, you feel like you have to turn it into a job.
absolutely.
I'm really
Yeah.
glad you found that. That sounds
Yeah.
amazing, and I
Yeah.
look forward to seeing some of it. So I've
Cool.
asked you to think of something that provoked a strong reaction of some sort. Now that could be a negative or
Yeah.
positive reaction, or some
Mm.
other kind of strong reaction. What
Ew.
was yours, and what was your reaction?
My the piece I've picked is Ernest and the Pale Moon, which was a theatre production by Les Enfants Terribles. They'd just done this incredible amount of atmosphere building with very, very little. They had sort of live, they were actor musicians. It was about three or four hander, I think. And they had sort of live folio work on stage. So
Mm.
the story was, because I'm a bit of an old goth, it was quite a sort of dark story about a man who is Ernest, lives with his mother. He's quite a sort of shut in, isolated character. And he becomes obsessed with the woman who lives in the flat across the alley from his and his mother's, who I only really recently remembered is a blind character. It's a sort of dark comic piece. It was quite funny, given what I've just told you about it. It was quite funny without it feeling, like it was, trivializing violence against women or any of that sort of stuff that can happen. And it was just so creatively framed. They had a very minimal set, as I said, live folio on stage, and they were managing to create things that I could definitely see, but they were entirely in my imagination. They were using, just a wooden frame doorway and
Um,
somebody like, and forgive me, this is going to be a little sort of graphic in terms of sort of how they created the sounds of violence. But at one point, Ernest is trying to fold a body into a cupboard, and they were using an empty plastic water bottle that they were just sort of twisting to make this sort of cracking, crunching, grinding sound. And then they were snapping dried lasagna sheets. And you could see them doing this. And I was
yeah.
watching this woman performing some very excellent physical theatre to sort of mine being folded into a box. And just, even though I could see everything happening, it was that very Brechtian thing. You're
Mm.
completely involved in the process. I still had this incredibly full vision of what I was seeing, despite
Oh,
the fact that it
wow.
didn't match with what was actually happening in front of
Yeah,
me.
that's
And it
clever.
was, yeah, and it's one of the most poignant memories I have of, again, re-engaging with theatre. Because, like I
Hmm.
say, after I graduated, I'd sort of put myself off a bit, and I went to see this, and I was like, oh God, no, theatre can be just the best thing in the world, can't
Yeah.
it? And I just really, really wanted more of it after that.
Well, look, Jill, you've been very
Mm,
even-handed in your with your genres of art, with your three that
sure.
you've chosen. You've
Mm.
chosen a piece of visual art, some
Yes,
writing art,
yes.
and you've chosen a bit of theatre as well. So I'm wondering what you've
Uh-huh.
chosen for your final piece, the Mona Lisa, the thing you would steal if
Yeah,
you could get away with it. What would you
yeah.
choose?
I have actually I've chosen a piece of sculpture,
Hmm.
and it is The Reviving of Psyche by Cupids by
Oh,
either Canova or Canova. I can never remember how you
I
pronounce
don't
their name.
know. No idea.
I don't know either. I went to see it. I was fortunate enough to see the real one of it in the Louvre a few years ago, but I studied classical civilizations at A level.
Me too.
So we did. Again, it's a bit of a problematic story nowadays, but again, as a sort of 16-year-old, I kind of love this story about, this love affair between these two people, and one of them hadn't even seen the other, and then before they've even seen each other, one of them gets poisoned, is about to die. and then, the kiss of her lover revives her. So I thought that was incredibly romantic.
Yeah.
And it's a really beautiful piece of sculpture. And again, I'm not a visual artist at all. I cannot draw anything. I don't really feel like working with my hands is my medium. So I'm always very impressed by anyone who can make anything look like it's a thing. And so that, yeah, the just the bodies of those people they look like you could touch them and they'd be warm. It's such a beautifully made piece of art.
Yeah.
It tells this story that I just thought was so passionate and romantic. And I remember, I do love being taught the secrets of things. So, we were talking about the fact that the way his wings are sort of arcing up behind him and her arms are up around his neck forms this sort of perfect X in the middle of the sculpture. So it draws the eye to all of the points, and the hidden poison bottle that's falling out of her hands. Just having someone sort of take me through a piece of art and go, and can you see this? And what about that? And did you notice this? I really love that. And that was one of the pieces of sculpture that I remember really going into detail on, and just finding little hidden guides to the story throughout the entire sculpture. And again, I suppose it comes back to storytelling actually, is I love the fact that you can look at a piece of visual art and something that I'm going to use the phrase done well, but I hope you know that I don't imply that there's a general quality standard that you meet. But I think if you have created a piece of art that tells the story you're trying to tell, then it's done well.
Yes.
And I think that piece of sculpture is a really good example of capturing so much of the story in this one still image.
Incredible and very articulately described and put. Well done. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you. It's been absolutely
so
lovely. Super. Well,
Yeah.
Thanks ever such a lot, Jill.
No problem.
Thank you for listening to Art is Good For You with me, Rachel Duffield. If you can't wait for more art-based chat, or even better, this podcast has inspired you to pick up a paintbrush or a pencil yourself, you can find details of all my classes, including my community art clubs, on my website, www.rachelduffield.art.com. You can also follow me on Facebook and Instagram. Just search Rachel Duffield Art. What have you got to lose? Remember, art is good for you.